Welcome to today's MTD podcast. Process improvements and downtime reductions is the theme of this podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer with over 25 years experience and a proud member of the MTD team. Today, I'm joined by a good friend who I've known for many years within the industry. David Noaks has joined me. David's got a wealth of experience from machine tool sales and specialist workholding solutions. So welcome to this podcast, Dave. How are you, my friend?
Good morning, Gio. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Despite the circumstances, yeah, I'm all good. Thank you.
What have you been up to, Dave, during this lockdown period?
Work-wise?
Yeah, and both, really.
Well, we are restricted in many ways, but work-wise, surprisingly, we've still been quite busy. Certainly for the first week, we got a lot of orders for customers that had turned over their production to the ventilator parts. And, we could tell who was doing them because they were all ordering the same size clamping heads and this, that and the other. So, I'm proud that engineering has sort of stepped up to the mark and, he's doing a bloody good job.
That's great news, Dave, about the orders coming in for ventilator parts and you supporting the production of them with your products. The theme of this podcast, as mentioned, is process improvements and downtime reduction. So it's extremely important, especially when there's such an urgent need for these parts to be produced as efficiently as possible, to have the right work holding in place. And we're going to be touching on that later on in this podcast. But firstly, Dave, how did you get into engineering? You've been in engineering now for many years.
It's longer than I remember. Well, thing is, Gio, when I left school, there weren't the options that the kids have these days. And, by and large, if you left school with a handful of O-levels, which is what I did, the options to you were sort of engineering, garage mechanic. There weren't many options. I'm just trying to think what some of my friends did. They went into either printing, engineering, working as, say, garage mechanic. There weren't that many options. And, I do remember at school, I was quite good at art and I wanted to be an artist. But as soon as I started taking my folder around to these places, I realised that I wasn't as good as I or even the teachers had sort of said I was. So, engineering, well, as a kid, I was always into, push bikes, taking them to bits and adding bits onto them, and motorbikes as well. So it kind of made sense that I went into something with a mechanical bias.
So, Dave,
I've got to be frank with you, Gio. My apprenticeship, I hated it. Hated every minute of it. I'm surprised I'm still here.
Why did you hate it?
Because I did a very old traditional apprenticeship in an old Victorian factory, which you didn't see daylight. Particularly in the winter months, you go in the dark and come out in the dark, and it was very strict and straight laced, and it wasn't the apprenticeship that's afforded to the kids these days. You followed certain modules and. Yeah, it was like being back at school again, but without the fun.
Yeah, I mean, we recently visited, didn't we, Dave? It seems a long time ago now, but it was only, I think, just before Christmas. We visited the AMRC. I mean, it wasn't like that back in the day when we did our apprentices. That's definitely for sure.
And as you know, Gio, we set on an apprentice, and I spend a lot of time with him. Purely on the basis that, I want him to have an apprenticeship that, if you like, I didn't have. I'm not saying my apprenticeship was bad. I learnt a lot, but it was dour, to say the least.
Well, I spent most of mine in the pub, I reckon, Dave, which I shouldn't really be saying that, really. But yeah, near our engineering college, there was a pub. So we did quite often, on our lunch break, visit the pub. The Chase, it was called, on Iron Lane. But anyway, moving on, Dave, swiftly. You from doing your apprenticeship, tell us about the experience you've had within the industry. I mean, I know, it's before I met you, but you used to sell machine tools.
Well, what happened is as soon as I finished my apprenticeship, I realised that I got my ticket to get out, if you like. But what actually, it's funny how things come by you. The company I was working for had a CNC machine, and this was in the early days. This was 1979. And I thought, you know what? That's the future. I need to learn how to use that, which I did. And typically of any sort of technology at the time, it used to break down quite a lot. So the service engineer, I got to know quite well. And, I spoke to him quite a lot about sort of, what he did and the company. And it was a company called Matchmaker, which back in the day, 1979, there were only a handful of people doing CNC machines. It's not like it is now. And Matchmaker were one of the pioneers of the CNC, mills. Most definitely, I think there was only sort of Moog, Acton, Matchmaker and Bridgeport about in those days.
Wow.
So, I was lucky to pick up on that quite early doors. And anyway, to cut a very long story short, I got a job at Matchmaker as a trainee sales guy doing the Midlands area. And I was there for 19 years, all told.
Wow.
And, they used to sell the various Japanese machines. And, obviously I saw all the big names coming into it. But of course, the big names when I was selling machine tools were sold by dealers. They weren't direct. You've got a big company in Birmingham called Elgar PMT. And they sold everything, Mazak, Akuma, the whole lot.
Right.
They were a one-stop shop for machine tools. It was quite something.
So the industry...
But, I've seen how the machine tool sector evolved. And by and large, I enjoyed it, and I had a massive area. I used to do everything from sort of Luton up to sort of Lancashire.
Wow.
So, it kept me out of trouble for quite a bit. And I enjoyed it. I had a great boss, guy called Blake Powell. He was the MD, he owned the company, and he was fantastic. And during that sort of 19 years I was there, eventually it was bought out by a company called Yamazan, a Japanese company, and it became Yamazan Matchmaker. And then Blake retired, and it never seemed quite the same again.
Yeah, I mean, the machine tool industry certainly evolved significantly over the years. Some of the new innovations that are now available, you would not even recognise CNC machines today as they were even back when I was using them and programming them on the shop floor. That they've moved on so rapidly. Moving on from your machine tool experience, Dave, which was a large majority of your career, you then... this is when I got to know you, really. I think you had a short spell as a teacher, but then you went in working with Hainbuch UK when they officially opened up in the UK as a sole agent. What happened there, Dave?
Well, it was funny actually, because I during the sort of the hard times and the recession of sort of 2007. Yamazan, who I was working for at the time, basically withdrew from Europe. And at the time, I'd never have got another job in engineering. And, there's another story to it, and it can save for another day. But I ended up teaching kids, 8 to 14 years old, maths and PE at a local grammar school, which, I did enjoy. I'm glad I did it, but I'm glad I'm not doing it now. But engineering's a very sort of, incestuous business, and we all know each other anyway. And of course, when Nick Peter, who's the MD at Hainbuch, he used to work for Leader Chuck Systems, who were the agent for the Hainbuch product. And when Hainbuch decided that they wanted to sell direct, Nick was the guy they chose, and Nick sort of, him and I got together to get it going, really, and Lucy, his wife. So 10 years ago now.
And I can remember the day when I first met you, Dave, when you actually took on the agency, and ever since then we seen each other at nearly every exhibition and open house going in the UK. It's fair to say.
Yeah, we have. We have indeed.
And it's been great to know you and working with you over the last 10 years, Dave. Now, in this current climate, Dave, you know, it is difficult at the minute, but it's great to hear that you've kind of still busy and that you're still selling products and helping people, because effectively we've always discussed this, Dave, and you know, when we sell it, it's about not just selling a product but selling a solution that ultimately helps the end user. And you know, we're quite guilty of this, if you'd like to put it that way, Dave. Would you agree?
Guilty of what exactly, Gio? I'm guilty of a lot of things.
Helping the end user and looking for a solution rather than just selling a product.
Well, you know, the thing is, our product is a solutions-based product anyway, Gio. So, you know, people come to us who are having, you know, a multitude of problems, but, you know, one is set up for a start, because, you know, the beauty of the Hainbuch is it's all quick change. It's modular as well, so it's almost like having a Meccano set. You can add to it at any time. And, you know, not just, so setup's a big one, accuracy, you know, the quick change feature, they're the three key points for us. And yeah, if I'm guilty of anything, you know, if I'm in at a customer, you know, I'll sort of look round at what they're doing and sort of, you know, just make a suggestion, you know, have you thought of doing it this way?
Yeah. I mean, for people that may be unaware of the Hainbuch solutions and technology, can you just give a little bit of a brief overview to what it is from a layman's point of view, for people around the world that may be listening to this podcast that have I know it's unlikely, but that may have not heard of Hainbuch? Can you just try to, I know it's difficult on a podcast, but can you try and explain what it actually does, Dave, and for what products and machines, tools?
Okay. Well, you know, Hainbuch basically is a modular work holding system that's designed for lathes and machining centres. A lot of people think that we're predominantly lathes, which they wouldn't be far wrong, but we do a lot of sort of stationary prismatic stuff as well. And it's all interchangeable. So in other words, if you've got a lathe with a Hainbuch chuck on, you can buy a product to put on your machining centre, which will use the same clamping heads and modular devices that go into the lathe that will fit on the machining centre as well. So it's all quick change, and it's modular, so you can use it on either or.
So that really brings us back to the beginning of the podcast nicely, really, Dave. You mentioned that you were supplying products to make the ventilator parts, and I mentioned that it's absolutely imperative that these parts get made in the most efficient way and reducing any potential downtimes because they're so urgently required. Now, you mentioned reducing setup times and keeping the spindle turning. In an engineering environment, this is one of the key aspects for a company to become more profitable. You know, can you explain? You've explained the way in which it's interchangeable. Can you explain the way in which it saves setup times, please, Dave?
Well, one of the keys to our product is this, Gio. Yeah, one of the reasons these guys doing the ventilator parts have got in touch with us is primarily they've got a machine with Hainbuch on it. So, you know, I can't tell you exactly what these ventilator parts look like or what dimensions they are, but rather, you know, they've got an order for so many parts. Rather than changing the whole work holding aspect of the machine, all they have to do is buy the collets to suit the size bar or whatever material they're holding from us. So while it's, if you like, a consumable, it's certainly not a disposable item, but we generally have these on the shelf. So, you know, that is all they need to do to change over the
setup,
the part that they're machining.
So,
and of course, excuse me.
It's all right, Dave. It's all
And
right.
so again, it's all about changeover and how quickly it can be done. And just by buying the collet size that you need, off you go. And the collets are quick change, so they're collapsed by a gun. You put the collet into the chuck, you release the gun. That's it. That's how long it takes to change collets on those machines.
But even with the other products that you've got for the milling machines with the 0 point, and even the chucks, the collet chucks themselves, which are interchangeable between a chuck, a collet chuck, and even a vice now on a machine, it's all 0 point now, and
It
the
is indeed.
The setup times for that's also very quick, isn't it, Dave? And can you kind of give us an indication not only of how quick it is to set up, but the repeatability that you get also?
Well, the repeatability will always be based on how well the work holding has been set up to initially. And as a company, if we're installing the product, we make sure that they're absolutely bang on. And you can get these things running to within a couple of microns maximum. And as you know, with 0 point, that will only follow what the main component is set up to. But really, what we're talking about, Geo, is if we take a chuck on a lathe or some sort of mandrel device on a gear cutting machine, to change over the head, if you like, it's just a case of series of three nuts, and that releases the end part. You take it out, you put the other size in, 3 nuts to clamp it up, and it's all got a 0 point location. So as long as everything's clean, it goes back on, and it will run to what the initial chuck or mandrel has been set up to, which by and large I would say 2 microns is roughly where we are with those, 1 or 2 microns.
So it's effectively simplifying the setup of a machine tool. Now, with you having extensive knowledge in machine tools and work holding, it's safe to say that work holding certainly adds value to the machine tool. And what I mean by that is, the setup time is one aspect, but with your system as well, you have a unique feature that you can hold on minimal excess material, and it still kind of eliminates any vibration. And there's lots of benefits to that. Can you explain to our listeners what they are?
Well, I think the item you're talking about is the clamping head or the collet in the chuck. Now, back in the days when we had multi-bore collets, they collapsed in a way that they didn't hold the part in a parallel fashion. So in other words, they collapsed in a tapered fashion. Our clamping head collapses evenly along the length of the clamping length. So what we actually say is, so long as the part is held from the front of the chuck, not the front of the collet, but you can hold on a minimum of 3 millimeters without it spitting the part out. So what that in effect does is that saves you on any waste stock. And not just that, for smaller components, you're able to hold those, particularly with an end stop as well, which it comes standard with the chucks anyway. So, you can hold on a lot smaller thicknesses.
Yeah, no, that's very well explained. I mean, you also do, for the lathe, you also do the internal mandrels as well to hold the parts internally. Now, we've been looking at MTD. We've been looking at a lot of the manufacturers currently that have been manufacturing the ventilator parts, and there has been a common theme that they seem to all be using the latest technologies to manufacture them, which includes automation. When we were back at EMO last year, we came onto the Hainbuch stand, and to automate Hainbuch is extremely simple as well by changing the setups with a robot, by having the pins that can go into the collets and automate that. So you are at the forefront of innovations. Can you explain to anyone listening, if they were looking to automate their processes at the minute, how they can do it with your system, please, Dave?
Well, all that really is, Gio, and it's fairly simple in that you're able, if you like, to run unmanned, but change over the part during that unmanned cycle. And what you can do is you can actually change the collet using the robot. So you just have a different gripper on the robot to pick up the collet from, if you like, a stack at the side of different size collets in certain positions. And you can change the collets over without using the manual gun that we'd probably use in the, under normal circumstances. So, yeah, that just enables you to run a wealth of different parts unmanned.
And how important do you think this is at the minute during this current climate?
If I'm honest, Gia, I don't really know because I'm not fully aware of the sort of quantities that these people are making. I know they're big, but it's spread out across a lot of engineering companies. It's not just one engineering company making these. But certainly, if they're making certain, I mean, I have seen some of these ventilator parts and they come in all shapes and sizes. And if you were doing an unmanned run of, shall we say, 3 different types of part, you would be able to do that. Just if you had a robot to change the collet over during the unmanned cycle. So that is possible, but I'm not aware anybody's actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, in my opinion, I think it's a fantastic solution and a very, as you mentioned, a very simple one that works so easily and that can be implemented by engineering companies so simply as well. It's something that if people were looking to get into automation, should certainly look at in regards to their work holding solution as well. Touching upon again, Dave, I think I mentioned it briefly, but in your opinion, Dave, you've worked with machine tools and work holding. How important is work holding to the process, the engineering process? And can you explain why?
I think over the years, Gio, work holding has become a key element in any machine tool purchase these days. And I think the machine tool guys know this. And, there's a wealth of very good work holding companies out there. And, really, at the end of the day, I use the analogy. It's a bit like your car. You may buy a really nice car, but it's pointless having rubbish tyres on it because you're never going to get the best out of it. And the same analogy applies to a machine tool. Why spend all that money on a great machining centre or lathe and buy, substandard work holding? It's a lost leader. You've got to buy the right work holding for the machine, and it just goes back to what we were saying. It improves the accuracy of the end product that you're making. It decreases your setup time. It's user friendly, so the guys down on the shop floor, they're happy using it because it makes their life easier. And it's the sum of parts, if you like, Gio, that it's not one single thing. And as I say, work holding now is a primary factor on machine tools. Definitely, I see that at all of our sort of partner shows and open houses. The work holding guys are at the forefront, and it's not just us. There's quite a lot of other very good companies out there.
Yeah, no, I I agree with you on that one, Dave. Now, for people that have listened to this podcast and that may be interested in looking at your products and buying your products, especially if they've got ventilator parts to manufacture, how are you dealing with the stock levels, Dave? Are you carrying much stock? Is there long lead times?
Well, we carry a certain amount of stock in the UK, but it's always typical that the component that the customer wants we haven't got. But typically at the moment we can generally get stuff from Germany because we're a German parent company. We can get stuff within 3 to 5 days maximum. I mean, obviously, this is a worldwide pandemic, so they're having the same problems in Germany that we are here, but they have got, you know, a reduced workforce in, and, you know, manufacturing is still going ahead over there, so we can get parts. It's just the specials that are difficult to get, and they are on long lead times.
Oh, brilliant, David. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today's MTDCNC podcast. I hope you stay safe, Dave, and we'll get back to normality.
And everybody else out there.
Yeah, no, hopefully we'll get back to normality very, very soon. Any last thoughts, Dave? Any last messages you want to get across before I end this podcast, my friend?
Yeah, I think that, you know, one thing that really is in my mind at the moment, and probably amongst all the engineers listening to this, is that, you know, I don't understand that why UK engineering is not getting a big pat on the back at the moment for you know, the support that we're giving, you know, the NHS and what have you with this ventilator work. You know, and I watch the news every night, and nobody actually said, you know, as sort of, you know, given UK engineering the right sort of pat on the back it needs. You know, we're helping out here, as indeed many other different companies are. But, you know, engineering in the UK, I think, has been a forgotten industry for a long time. And as we all know who work in it, you know, we're in rude health and have been alive and kicking for many years. And, you know, I'm reasonably optimistic that when we come out of this, that, you know, we'll still have a fairly good industry here, because, you know, most of my customers are still working to satisfy not just ventilator work, but, you know, we've got a lot of customers who are in the implant business as well, and these things don't stop. You know, people still need them. And of course, yeah, that's another thing we need to be proud of. A lot of the implant business is in the UK, you know, here in Ireland, and nobody ever really talks about that.
No, very good point, Dave. I think you're absolutely right. I think that the engineering industry within the UK should be extremely proud of themselves for what they're doing now, but what they've always been doing in the past as well. I hope that, you know, some good comes from this situation that we're in, and I'm sure it will. I think that we're certainly becoming more patriotic than I've ever seen us before. And I think that that's good. I think Made in Britain should be a big theme that we should continue long into the future. And we should look at manufacturing and become, as a nation, more aware of what we actually do in this fantastic industry, Dave. Absolutely.
I agree, Gio. I agree.
Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. So there you have it, from David Noaks from Hainbuch UK. They're still supplying top class workholding solutions for the manufacture of ventilator parts for it, but also any other parts that you may still be manufacturing. So please get in touch with Hainbuch if you have any urgent requirements. And that's the MTD podcast for today. Any questions, please send them in, and make sure to subscribe to the MTD podcast on your iPads or phones.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.